AI is the new electricity, but what's becoming clear now is this: models alone don't create value. It's the system we build around those, they create value. The agents that reason, act, and iterate, that will actually turn that intelligence into real work is what we need. A very warm good evening to all of you, and it's a pleasure to host you along with Hexaview, our partner today. Thank you for spending your half a day with us. And we promise you a practitioner-led session on what is important at this point in time. Without further ado, I would like to invite my friends. Let me quickly walk you through their interesting profiles. And I'm going to mix it up a little bit in terms of our schedule, because we have some guests who are very impatient to straight away get ahead to Rajan and Kashi's session. So Hexaview Technologies is my co-host for the evening, and I would like to welcome on stage Kashi, who's the Chief AI Officer at Hexaview Technologies. Kashi, please come. Along with Kashi, we're going to enjoy a fantastic fireside chat between Rajan and Kashi. Rajan is the founder of Calmantic AI Labs and has done many things. He's a friend and a mentor. Super proud to welcome you today at this event. Rajan, most AI coverage is either hype or hand waving. Rajan writes the third thing: what's actually working, what isn't, and why it matters for the team making real decisions. He runs Calmantic Agentic Labs, where they focus on inference performance, MOE architectures, and NemoClaw-based agentic systems. He's written 4 books on AI, including Harness Engineering, Model is the Easy Part, Peak Inference on AI Infrastructure Economics, NemoClaw Strategy, a Field Guide. Are we also getting one of these books free for a day on? Okay, all right. Thank you. And I would like to welcome our second guest on stage. Joining him is Kashi KS. Most CXOs don't need another AI explainer. They need someone who's built the thing, sold the thing, and can tell them what's actually worth their attention. That's what Kashi brings. Chief AI Officer at Hexaview, and prior to this, a 2-time founder across hardware and SaaS. Over to you, gentlemen. I'm super excited myself to attend this session.
Aditi, thank you so much for this wonderful and kind introduction. I'm also very excited for this session. Kashi, I'm going to jump right in. What is this craze of harness engineering?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of craze over the models, but harness is a tougher part. So if you really start thinking in terms of harness, if you need to unleash the power of the model, the harness is the first gateway. People often think harness is all about coding agents. It's beyond coding agents. So if you take an example of it, if you take an example of a car has an engine generates a tremendous amount of power. But to move the car from point A to point B, you require the entire engineering setup to harness the power, bring it to the powertrain and drive the car forward. Or if you're even taking it one step further, when you think in terms of aero, the engine is the easy part. Like probably I would say that because there's a lot of aerodynamics involved to get the plane flying and take it from point A to point B.
Are you saying that model is the engine and the rest of them is this the harness?
Yeah, so model is the engine, but to leverage the power of the model, you require the harness, which will help you accomplish a goal, which is to help you accomplish a goal, you require the harness. So that's why our book, Model is the Easy Part. The tougher part is the harness, where you draw value out of the model, which is...
What is difference between harness and context? About 3 months ago, the rage was all about context engineering. Everybody was saying that, you need to manage your context. And suddenly now, like, I don't know, maybe since Feb of this year, we've been talking about harness. What's the difference?
So I think context is a very small part of the entire harness engineering toolkit. So context helps model guide, predict the next token, or how it helps you navigate from point A to point B to get an intent done. So when you talk in terms of the harness, this is far beyond that. There's a set of tool set that comes in. For example, it could be file read, or it could be even doing a transaction. When you think in terms of harness, when you walk across Silicon Valley, we were last week at Cupertino, then before at San Jose, and so on and so forth. every company is talking about building their own harness, but nobody is coming in the open and revealing it. But when you talk about it,
Why is that? Why is that, everybody wants to build their own harness but are being very secretive about it?
So that's a whole part of this conversation why you're here. So if you're focusing on, own your data, own your destiny was a old story of the past. I would say, hey, own your model, own your destiny. I think that is a story that people look forward to in the future. But if you really look about harness is a way in which you're really coming to the way in which you're starting to think that, hey, own your harness, own your destiny. So if you are, you're also going to talk about Nemoclaw-based organizations, so on and so forth. If you really look at it, entire model is like the DNA, but the same DNA can be used to create multiple kinds of organisms. Humans are just one part. You can't paint the entire world black and white. So I think here is where the entire part of the harness comes, that how do you create so many forms of life forms which will come to life. And here we are talking about agentic organizations. That's where we are thinking, hey, if this has to come to life, you're not just building for one part of the organization, but entire organization DNA has to be stitched up. So previously, when we thought in terms of context, is a myopic view of really looking at what is my particular intent for a given prompt, where you're thinking in terms of 1,000 tokens. When you're talking in terms of harness, you're talking about all across the value chain. So which means the entire memory of the organization comes into the picture, where you have workflow stitched together from multiple stages of the organization. And previously it was a workflow, now it is about having that harness to get your work done. And that's why harness becomes the most important paradigm in the current era.
So are you saying that, context is anything and everything that goes inside the model, but harness is outside of the model in terms of the loops that it involves in, the tool calling it does, and then the external memory that it maintains?
It's true. You said it well. Harness is a way in which let's say you're sitting on the driver's seat of the car and you want to navigate from point A to point B. That's where context really comes in, saying that, hey, here's a pathway that I need to really take to go from point A to point B. You're giving micro inputs. But harness is the entire engineering, including the powertrain, the steering wheel, the seat you sit in, which to navigate to everything, or if it is autonomous driving car as well. So harness is the entire engineering that goes behind taking the power of the model and guiding your organization from point A to point B with the intent that you achieve want to achieve in reality.
So then why do people get excited every time a new model launched, right? So we saw 5.5 got launched, and then suddenly the GPU pricing changed.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying that, models don't matter, at least in March of 2026, April 2026. And we had 5.5 that got launched a few days ago. And then like Thomas Tungus wrote a post today saying that, that is actually really shaking the GPU prices. Why is that happening if car is more important than the engine?
So I think it's a phase-based approach, right? If you really look at it today, we are only talking about models, unleashing the power of the models. Mostly the community that is talking about is a developer community. But if you go beyond and start looking at, we have been to chip companies, we have been to manufacturing setups, so on and so forth, where the power of the model in terms of generating the next line of code doesn't really matter. But if you're engineering a complex engineering rig, so we were talking about chip to, prompt to chip kind of an architecture for automotive. So here it really matters that you start thinking beyond the model. Model is just one of the tools. And model doesn't help you just get from one model, doesn't serve your purpose. So that's where the power of the harness comes in. And what does harness really do? If you really take the analogy of the car itself, it's like the powertrain. It draws when you talk about powertrain, it's not just converting the thermal energy into the mechanical energy, but it's also electrical energy to power your music systems or control your navigation systems. So the same power of the model is now being harnessed to do multiple outcomes. And that's where I think we are seeing this. Now it's even one step further, creation of an agentic organization itself.
Before we go to the agentic organization, we talked about, and this is the topic here as well, listed as the in our brochure here, right? So it says rent versus buy. So if we actually say model is the engine, harness is the car, and we are saying that, everybody need to build their own car. Why? And you're saying that people are doing secretively.
I think the part that they are doing secretively is, at least in the valley, it's a public open secret, but beyond it's a closed secret. So let's talk about not now, but let's say a few years into the future. Today, a lot of that data doesn't lie in the hands of OpenAI and Anthropic. So, so if you start exposing entire DNA of your organization, the threat that you will face an existential crisis, because that's the only competitive edge you have today. And harness gives you the power, saying that, hey, today I may not have the capability to build a model, but tomorrow, as my capabilities increase and my unit economics really support that, I'll be able to build a model. Building a model is the easy part today. I don't think it's such a complicated thing anymore. People have figured it out. It's just a matter of time when the unit economics kicks through that I have enough amount of GPU cards to do it. And people also think that every model need not be a frontier model. We have seen that time and again. There are enough use cases that a non-frontier model can achieve a great organizational outcome. And not just as, let's talk about why HubSpot is doing it, why Ramp is doing it, why so many other people in the Valley are doing it. They're not really foolish to go and invest their energy into building in their own harness. And that's where we have to see that, hey, when smarts of the smarts are doing it, why not you do it? And that's a whole talk about, right? And the question is, how do you design a great harness? And this is where I think the battle really comes in, that people often think that all harness is coding harness. That's where the myth needs to be broken.
Come to that, sir.
Yeah.
All the common perception is all harnesses are coding harnesses. You're only comparing a Claude code with a cursor, with a Klein or a Roo code, which looks very ancient now.
That's right.
But you're saying that the harnesses are not just coding harnesses. There can be, what a good example of other harnesses?
So the automotive example that we started talking about, right? When we talk about the entire automotive supply chain and the control ecosystem, when we are talking about it, definitely the harness there was about how do you design an entire control system of the car using a single prompt. Now, which means that you're actually rigging that into a physical rig, integrating with the test surface.
But is that like a coding agent inside?
Or it's not a coding. You are definitely, you may be using Anthropic API, or you may be even using your own model API rigged to a Blackwell chip. But having said that, when you talk in terms of the harness, you're actually saying that, hey, it was a multi-step value process which had different decision engines at each point in time where humans used to take those decisions.
Yeah, let me ask a slightly different question related to this. Would you call Claude Cowork as a harness? Yeah, why or why not?
I wouldn't call, I think I would still not treat Claude Cowork as a harness. I would probably still call it a good tool to have. Yeah, Claude, I think let's differentiate between the two, right? Just because a harness has a capability to do tool calling and do computer use, it doesn't actually become the harness. Yes, it does unleash the power of the model to a great extent that it takes over a lot of work that you do. But when you talk about harness engineering, you have to think multidimensional in approach, saying that, hey, what human or organizational outcome I'm going to achieve, and start scaling that. The definition of a harness starts scaling upward in that value chain as you go up. So just because you've created a great tool, it doesn't become a great harness. I would still, it's nothing but a modern day calculator. If you really ask me, it's not just enough to achieve great outcomes. It has driven great economic value, but I don't think it's just enough.
Got it. So harness is beyond model, but it is not a tool, is what you're saying?
Yeah, harness is beyond model, not a tool, but it's really the entire. I think the way you need to start thinking of harness, I'll probably go back to the aircraft example per se. If you treat model is equal to aircraft engine, the entire rig of harnessing of power of the engine to get the aircraft flying, power the control systems, get it to navigate, everything else is the harness for, and the passengers are just the people who are going from point A to point B, so which could be your customers in this case. So the harness is everything around that you rig to get the power of the model out, and that's where the entire effort of the Silicon Valley is going to do.
So you talked about agentic organization. I want to come back to that a little bit, but I want to sort of delve a little more deeper on like just the owned versus rented part, right? So when do you decide to go like how HubSpot and Ramp did in building your own coding agent? And when do you continue to use Claude Code? Or Cursor, or whichever is the favorite choice of your coding agent is?
I think it's a very important question, right? So people think own your model, own your destiny.
But
Or-
like, unpack that. Like, what
Yeah,
does
I'm
it
gonna
mean?
unpack it.
What does own your model, own your destiny mean?
So I'm going to unpack that, right? So people often use this as a generic term, saying that, "Hey, I'm going to build goddamn everything within your organization, own my own model."
Why?
I think that's just a DNA of how IT leaders interpret to save their jobs. But let's really unpack that into real core of the organization, right? There are critical functions within your organization where you need to own. For example, we are speaking to the banking customer, right? So if it's a core banking customer, how I mean, we saw the recent announcement of LPL partnering with Anthropic to do agentic co-advisors. If I were LPL, I wouldn't do that, right?
Right.
It's a core banking functionality that I'm taking control. Let's say your organization has a sales CRM. Don't go build your own model, own your destiny, and like have the facade saying that, oh, I'll not use Salesforce, I'll not use HubSpot, and I'll go build my own CRM just because I will. The model allows me to do. You can sort of like build a replica in no time today. It is not the best energy of the organization that is really spent, but the true economic value of the organization really comes from actually going down deep into saying that, hey, this is my core IP. Can I protect it? For example, the automotive conversation that we were having, that's where the core IP lays. And that's where the own your model, own your destiny really comes in. Not going and really saying that, oh yeah, I'm going to build a CRM system just because I can do it, or I'm going to build some other, there's a lot of, what you can say, I would call it fake application build concept thing that I'll build everything. I think you should drop that.
Then you should have then bought only coding agents and not really built your own.
I'll probably ask a different question, right? An organization is not only a part of coding agents. So that's where the entire conversation comes to, right? An organization has multiple functions depending on the DNA of the organization. If I am a core banking, my job is to protect my users' money and also use that money to go make alternative investments to make money for the organization. So that's where my IP really lies. And the whole game is about building trust, growing capital, and returning value. So that part of the business is not just humans. And I do understand that agents are coming into that part of the business. And if those agents come, the interaction and the intelligence that was in the minds of the human now being encoded into the DNA of those agents, if we call, that intelligence should lie with that organization because that's your core memory and your log. So when we start running the harness, let's back down what really happens, right? So actually memory of the organization gets created in terms of DNA or the blueprint. And now you're going to take that blueprint and sort of like export it to the model architecture. Then don't tell that your business is under threat 3 years from now, whatever happened to every other organization.
So the LPL and the Anthropic conversation that you're talking about happened in Feb.
Yeah.
In the age of AI, that feels like 8 years ago. Right?
Maybe
So let's talk about
ago.
yeah. So let's talk about something that happened last week.
Yeah.
Cursor
Yeah.
and XAI announced this partnership, right? Which was like, just like nice words to just announce an acquisition with a breakup fee of $10 billion and acquisition price of $60 billion. So that changes the entire own versus rented equation, right? So it almost felt like, two players in the market who were losing partnered together to actually compete with someone who's winning, which is like, Anthropic and Claude Code. And that pretty much declared that at least on the coding side, the renting era seems to be gotten over. So how does that change the dynamic of how do you then in the market make a decision about, do I rent a coding agent or I build a coding agent? Because now you don't know, where this coding agent is running from. And even there was this another controversy that came up. If you're like an American organization and if it has like a Chinese model that is powering that, Kimi K2 is powering that, then I don't know what kind of issues you might be having. So does that change the equation of renting versus owning your harness, at least on the coding agent side?
It depends on the nature of the organization, I would say. Like, again, not every part of the organization should be painted black and blue saying that, hey, I'll start restricting your cloud code access because I want to have access to that memory. I think there'll be a part of the organization where you need to own your harness, and there'll be parts of the organization where you don't need to own the harness. So when you're thinking in terms of CRM, or when you're thinking in terms of customer support, or you're doing something else, that
Let's talk about only coding agent.
Yeah.
Let's not
I'm
go to
coming to
other
the coding
application.
agent. Yeah, I'm coming to the coding agent, right? So those people who are supporting that particular part of the organization, I would say, don't waste your time, go and use Cloud Code or go use Copilot or whatever that's out there, because that's commodity. So on commodity, like be it, I mean, like how you see the phones, right? You want to go build your own battery pack, oh, congratulations, go do it. Like, who is stopping you? But your time to market will get destroyed. So, but rather than that, like, hey, if there is a, like the one when
Let's assume we are a bank, like a large organization.
For building a core banking application, I would never go and rent a model. I would always go own the model, because the secrets
on the coding agent side.
Even on the coding agent side, that's a pattern that we are seeing. And there are enough tools out there in the market. For example, Open Harness is a great tool. Open Code is a great tool, using which you can rig the model. And if you don't want to use a Chinese model, great enough. You can use a lot of proprietary open source models to get there. You can run your own harness. Building a harness is the easy part. I think building the model is the easy part, but if you can't build a model, building the harness is the easy part. But capturing the memory, and I would say the new word is, like, instead of own your data, own your destiny, I would say own your memory, own your destiny. If you start capturing the memory of how those actions do happen and what decision patterns are happening, and keep that within the context of your organization, then probably you have a chance of fighting back. As intelligence scales, you have a worthy way in which you can use that knowledge to actually scale the competitive fight back, right? Otherwise, it's like, like there's one bacterial organism which is going to paint all the entire landscape using one single organism, right? So we are all creatures who are going to compete. And if you want to compete, what is the speciality of the DNA that you need to build to give that fight back? And that's where that.
What is your favorite harness in, like, the recent implementation that you've seen? Is it OpenClaw? Is it Hermes? Is it open code based, implementation, or like what the Codex blog post that?
I would say NemoClaw. I mean, NemoClaw is not seen as a harness today, but having said that, it's also it's a blueprint for what agent.
Why do you say that? Why NemoClaw?
See, I think for the very first time, we'll talk about claws before we go to the harness. Why it should be treated? Why should you build your own harness or on NemoClaw or equivalent of it? For the very first time, any of these claws or equivalent agentic architecture revealed one single pattern, which is AI autonomy. The progress of your organization today is measured by degree of AI autonomy, which is nothing but the speed at which AI can make autonomous decisions determines the pace of growth. You are talking about what you can say, not hockey stick growth, what is it called? Pole stick growth.
Yeah.
Right? If you're coming to the pole stick growth era, you cannot drive pole stick growth era with humans trying to do it. You require agents to do it because it has to take autonomous decisions. For pole stick, I think I'd throw that question back to you, right? What is this craze about pole stick growth than the, hockey stick growth? I'll open it up for you.
Well, I think, the term pole stick growth was used by Peter Steiberger in his recent State of the Claw address that he gave.
Yeah.
I think this is perhaps the first time in technology we have not seen like a growth curve which goes like this. It just stands like this, right? So he just jokingly called it as a pole stick growth. So what it means is, like, I would actually proceed with something else that is happening with AI, right? There are many inflection points that have happened since the ChatGPT moment, which I'd like to call this as dam breaks. Like, the amount of outbursts that has happened in terms of growth is completely unprecedented. We have never seen a company get to about a couple of $1 billion in 2 years. Cursor. I've never seen a company which got to about like $1.5 billion in 8 months, and we are seeing this. And then in terms of just the adoption curve of OpenClaw has been like this. Many people ask, like, why is that OpenClaw is like this? Like, why are people getting crazy over that? And I would actually say, if you look at the GitHub stars as of today, then Hermes is following the same pattern. OpenClaw started in Jan, Hermes started on February 16th, and then you're seeing this the pole stick kind of growth, right? Because there is this, it's the architecture difference that is unlocking a magical experience that is making people go crazy over that and then say, okay, I'm going to use this and I'm going to sort of adopt this in a very different kind of a way. There were agentic frameworks that existed before. There was Crew AI. The difference is, if you want to think about OpenClaw, I would call this as like the Bumblebee in the movie Transformer, right? It can transform to anything that it wants. And that is really the power that actually makes enterprises nervous, But then, you see this magical character that can do whatever you want, connect to whatever interface you want, and then has the degree of autonomy that you talked about. And the whole architecture pattern of Heartbeat.md, where it makes it agent-driven as opposed to human-driven. And that is what drives this hockey stick kind of a growth. These are all like, unprecedented, I would say, patterns. So hockey, the pole stick is a new paradigm which is enabled by dam brakes, and then it leads to magical product experience. In fact, I would say that some of these products are not even magical. I will call them as digital cocaine. I mean, they are addictive. You ask any developer who's used. I mean, I don't know how many of you used Claude Code, right? So Claude Code. Practically everybody who's used Claude Code here can actually tell you that the experience is addictive. You spend 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours sometimes, and you cannot explain that by saying that this is a dev tool, right? Only other thing that can explain is some addictive substance. So these architecture shifts are enabling product experience which are not just magical but are all addictive. That leads to this pole stick type of growth, and that leads to the architectural differences that you are talking about, saying agentic organization.
So I'll ask, since you're also a VC and investor, are you only investing in pole stick startups?
Well, look, there are only 2 pole stick startups that have actually come up, or projects that have come up. But the important thing is to look at which are the next one that is coming up. The one that we've been talking for the last 3 months is OpenClaw, but then Hermes is going to just overtake that.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to look for more.
So I think we'll talk about what does it actually unlock, right? From an architecture perspective, being a technical guy. So I think the organization, when we are talking about own your coding harness and own your coding agent, or own your own harness, the way we are talking about is nothing, but it's not about the harness. It's also about one more thing, driving agency. OpenClaw and EmoClaw drove one important pattern, which is nothing but agency for the agent to do action given a broad set of goals. So when you start about harness engineering, let's say you go and rig Claude Code or any other tool, if you are letting it drive agency for your intent of the organization, that's a recipe for disaster that you're baking. But rather, if you own what it should do, I'm not here suggesting that, plug out Anthropic as a plugin and do that. You continue to use Anthropic APIs, continue to use Codex APIs, or whatever you choose to use, right? But just the harness engineering is where your IP lies today. Hopefully you are able to get
in designing the car, the engines have become commodity now.
Engines have become commodity.
Design the car or design an ambulance or whatever else your business goal needs, right?
Yeah, so rig that up and then achieve your goal, and then eventually if you are able to get to the state that, hey, you can own your model itself, that will be a great state to have. But until then, control at least part of the destiny you can control today.
So we talked a lot more technically about it, and then I want to come back to that agentic organization. What are the different type of organization that is taking shape because of agentic that you talked about?
So we are seeing 2 patterns, right? In here, in Valley, we are seeing one important pattern, which is called parallel organization. So if we really look at a business, they have 2 goals, right? Run the business, change the business. The fundamental
is parallel organization same as AI native or AI first or AI some one of those buzzwords?
It's AI native. Let me decipher that and let me answer this first, right? If you really look at it, CEO has 2 goals: run the business, change the business. Fundamentally, is going to change the business within the existing organization. If you divide the org into 3 segments, right? You will have a bunch of resistance, which is about 60% of the organization, and 30%, whatever the ratio could be, are the ones who can be molded into AI, and 10% are the people who, are leading you in the direction of AI. So if you are trying to, the one thing that most of the bold CEOs did is they fire the people who are AI resistive. But not every organization has the courage to do that. That's where the concept of parallel organization came in. So if you cannot rejig the organization natively to be AI native, I'll build a parallel org, which is a template of what should.
So if you can't do the hard work, then you will do the side work of parallel org.
Yeah. If you don't have the main chick, have the side chick. That's the way you're pointing it. But having said that, going back to the point, right? They build a parallel org and then said, hey, here's a template. Now I'm going to switch the actual org. Now that it's working, I'll switch it to the main org. That's parallel organization. In India, something different is happening. People don't have the courage or the stomach to go and say, I'm building a parallel org. That's what we saw. People are building a shadow org because they are so afraid of the political backlash or somebody else backlash saying that, oh, the jobs are going to go away. So I think that's how they are seeing it, and they're building a shadow. But having said that, it's a DNA or template of AI native organization or a department that is coming to Genesis, which has significant amount of AI autonomy or AI agency, which will drive a part of the business outcome. It is not necessarily in the core part of the organization yet, but it's definitely on the side of the organization that will drive outcomes.
Right. So, and is that where agents come across?
Yeah, that's where the agents are being born, as new kinds of agents are being created, and that's where we are seeing it.
What type of use cases are you seeing that where those use cases are not being use case anymore and have become like an AI agent, and that looks like in the old world a digital employee? Or
Yeah, so I think we'll talk about the most recent one that happened in the Valley. Previously, this is for a big banking and financial services firm. There were a lot of investment analysts trying to get a lot of reports for whatever purposes they were doing. And they were going back to the data center saying that, hey, mix and match this and that and give it to me. And that all got replaced with NemoClause. Of course, we're going to take a stab at NVIDIA here. NemoClause is, as you know, is crashing now, and it went back to OpenClause, and people are taking a dig at
so you're saying that there was OpenClaw, then
it became NemoClaw, yeah.
announced.
Yeah.
But how can you go against NemoClaw?
Yeah,
how
I
can
was
you
the
go
one
against
propagating
Jesus?
it, right? But I think that's where the world shifts, right? People look at whatever is working rather than trying to drive an outcome. But coming back to the example, this eliminated about 5 to 10 data centers in each department. So I think that's when we start looking at it, the agentic analyst was born from with the DNA of, or the harness of NemoClaw being rejigged to the digital employee. So, and this became the template in which they say, hey, now this opens a door to a new possibility that didn't exist before. And now, can this be the template that can be replicated for other organizations? And then other departments, here is not yet an organization, but a department is a good subset where such an organization is even getting born.
All right. So, we walk out of this room, we had some discussion about harness engineering, we had some discussion about difference on technically what it means, and look at coding agent and how to think about own versus renting. But if I go out of this room next working day, what are some of the things that I can take away from this discussion and do, or what are some of the things that I should do?
I think there are two things one must start really thinking, right? Like, one, in terms of building your own, if you are not yet there in terms of building your own harness, at least create a way in which you can own your memory. That's a one takeaway I would go and say, because harness engineering is sometimes hard depending on the size of the organization you are.
Like, what does it specifically mean? You save your own memory.md and then lock it somewhere? Is that what it means? Or
encrypt it, or at least start cataloging it. People are not really seeing how does it evolution is really happening. Because if you
don't do that, what happens?
You fail to evolve, and depending on the size of the organization where you are, I think you're actually giving away your core DNA that even Claude or somebody can replicate at some point in time. We saw that happen, that hey, some new model is launched and 50 other startups get, or something gets wiped out. But owning your memory is a pathway to do that. The second one I would strongly recommend is, if you have not tried OpenClaw or NemoClaw, go install it today and start trying to build a digital replica or digital employee for yourself, because the amount of unlock it is going to give you will form the template of the agentic organization that you want to build. So either you will become the builder of the agentic organization, or you will be the one who will be replaced by it, right? So I think that's how you have to see it. So which side you want to be on is the game you need to play. So I think that's a takeaway that we should have from this talk, if not anything else.
Awesome. Kashi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Rajan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Kashi.
Yeah.
Great talk. Thanks so much. I'm building Thiyagarajan. So, Thiyagarajan is a hardest journey platform, right? So, one interesting analogy that I like to use is that, building on your aeroplane analogy, if somebody has to provide real-time instrumentation for the flywheel, right? That's also what is super critical part. Are you seeing that, in your conversations? Like, somebody has to tell how fast you're going. Somebody has to tell how what the weather's looking like. Somebody has to tell what is the aeroplane manifest. Is it a transport plane? Is it a fighter plane? And all the information has to be bundled by somebody to make all this effective. Are you also seeing that in your conversations? And would love to get your take.
I think there's multiple such tools. Like one that you're building coming to Genesis. Rajan has built one himself. It's called Peak Inference, which was all about optimizing the inference tokens per se, but there are ones for security. There are ones, a lot of instrumentation is required in this, right? I think a lot of tools will emerge in the instrumentation era of the harness, because while you build the harness, not every, you don't need, like the other way to put it is you don't go build your own Splunk or don't go build your ELK stack, somebody is building it for you. So instrumentation becomes a big part of it, right? Unless you're the guy who's building Splunk or ELK stack. So I think the equivalent of it is coming, but it will not be in the same form or the shape it was, because the amount of tokens that's generated is infinite. You only are looking for the intelligence out of it. So if you're able to summarize and like contextualize it, I think that's a huge opportunity space that we see. Yeah.
So I have a slightly different take on this. My take is that, you know, we don't have the architecture battle settled.
Yeah.
In the sense that, you know, in the enterprise, right now we are asking this question, and this is why we, like 3 weeks ago, we stood together and then say, hey, Nemo Clause is all the answer for all the enterprise. And a week later, managed Anthropic agents got launched, right? And if you're someone who cares about sovereignty and you want to actually build your own stack, then you will actually say, okay, OpenClaw is a great architecture for building agents because they are different from all the other agent frameworks that are there. But then you have to figure out, like, you know, different layers within the stack, and there will be gaps, and like gaps would be in terms of logging, in terms of security, in terms of, like, you know, how do you monitor the runtime, etc. But then, like, Anthropic agents is coming and saying that, look, we will provide all of that. You don't have to worry about sandbox. You don't have to worry about runtime. And Anthropic is saying that all of this is available for like 8 cents an hour. And at this point in time, if you ask me, given how Claude Code had progressed, because, see, one of the things that I find absolutely fascinating about Anthropic is that it is not about model. Because if it was all about model, Google would have won the race. It is the model plus it is the product experience which is absolutely magical from a developer perspective. Right, so the challenge with NVIDIA and the Nemo Claw is that developers are shouting, saying that the DevX is broken. Right, so the enterprise architecture is great from a Nemo Claw perspective, but the DevX is going to be even more greater from a managed agentic or Anthropic agents point of view. But then the trade-off is you will lose the sovereignty. Right, so I always keep saying that, you know, anywhere I go, like, you know, I'm in love with Claude Code, but I hate Anthropic because, you know, it takes the control away. Right, so the architecture is not settled. So if your question is like, you know, where is the role of a harness monitoring, harness engineering monitoring is going to be there? It's like if Nemo Claw wins, or like, you know, a sovereign architecture wins, there is a big role for that. But if managed Anthropic agents win, and that's the whole, like, you know, rent versus own your own harness battle is, then, like, you know, maybe there is no role for that. That's my take.
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yes, my name's Gashab. I have a two-part question. Have you seen the Claude Code leak?
Yes.
Source
Yeah.
code?
Plus the Rust implementation. Yeah.
Yes, I'm curious, where does harness end and where does platform engineering start? Because they said mode is harness, so it leads into where the harness is deployed.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'll let him answer the question with one commentary. So I was having this conversation with the founder. He said, you know, context engineering, and this was like 6 months ago. He's like, okay, there are 100 different interpretation of context engineering, right? So even if you take harness engineering, I mean, the first time I heard about harness engineering was when the founder of Terraform, Hashimoto, right? I hope I'm getting his name right. He actually talked about it. And then it was actually eventually the OpenAI blog post that came out, which actually sort of gave technical details of, like, you know, what is harness. The challenge I would say is that, you know, it is a very porous term, right? So it is hard to actually draw a boundary, at least from a very leaky metaphor and analogy perspective. I would say that, you know, anything that is being fed inside the model, happening inside the model, is this all model and context related. And anything that is happening outside the model, starting with sandboxes, the runtime, and, like, you know, when you're running a Ralph Wiggum loop, or you're actually doing like an agentic flywheel, all of these are something that is considered inside harness, but the definition may be floating. But let me ask Kashi to sort of weigh in between, like, what is old platform engineering versus, like, you know, how the harness engineering is shaping up, Kashi.
I think both are getting mixed up. So let me answer this from an enterprise architecture perspective, right? If you really look at it, if you're an EA in the traditional sense, you'd do domain-specific modeling and break down the components into modular components. So now what is happening is in the traditional world, these modular components would be architected And harness would there was no concept of harness itself. Now what is happening is intelligence and autonomy is being embedded as part of that particular part of the platform, which is where that actually the confusion really lies, right? Hey, once AI autonomy becomes the centerfold of an organization, which means that harness also is getting embedded into part of that particular component, not in the same form or the shape as Cloud Code per se, but a much smaller form in many ways. So what are you actually answering this question is nothing but the lines are getting blurred more and more per se, but platform, when you talk in terms of platform engineering, it's a broader term where you look at decomposing the entire system architecture into modular components, solving a larger problem, and within that, you probably treat this as one of the common service bus layers wherein, hey, harness is going to be part of the service bus to actually leverage the power of the model. So that's how you might want to take a look at it.
So one thing it sounds like you are both kind of circling around is this idea that the competence within an organization sort of being dreamed out into the agents of some.
Yeah.
Do you think that's just going to keep happening, or do you think there's an alternative model that leads to people becoming more competent at basically the best content restaurant? And will that is it possible for that to be successful, or does it just end up in this case or offering everything and runs like wall to worlds?
Do you have an alternative suggestion? Do you have an answer to your own question? I mean, in terms of like, look at
My perspective is that if you're going to be building something, you want to be building it for the future that you want to exist. And so I'm building something for that. And if you can design a really good experience, people want to be better at the thing they do, and they walk away from using it full. But that's not the simplest path.
Sure. So that's
I'll
like
take that one.
Sure. Right.
Yeah. So we wrote a beautiful book called Agentic Operator Model for this topic, but I'll take that one really with an example, right? So what's happening if you broadly assess the landscape, right? In 1900s, before electricity was invented, what would happen is like the coal would be mined from the mines, and it would be coming to a yard, and from the yard to deliver to a home, and it would burn, the furnace would be burning with the coal, right? And then you would have if you look at the entire supply chain there, right? You would have a guy who's actually mining the coal, somebody who's bringing it to the yard, who's putting it to the home, and you also have the chimney cleaners who would be cleaning the chimneys, right? Now, suddenly what happened, electricity, which is a direct form of energy, got delivered to the home. Oh, and now, if you are looking at the lens of the guy who was a coal worker, or the guy who was bringing the coal to the yard, or the chimney cleaner, you have a disruption at unprecedented scale. Now, if you like, and they all lost their jobs in some way, they all reinvented. But that's the same thing that's happening to the intelligence. Today, intelligence is going to be democratized. It's the new electricity of the new era. How does one pivot? There's an answer that one might need to ask the better question, right? Hey, how do you handle this change, disruption? The disruption is quite simple. If you become the guy who actually go and wire this home with the electricity, you are still at the very low end of the value chain. You're not going to make the money. But if you treat electricity as a new energy source and start inventing, you have this light bulb which is actually generating it. And GE is the biggest multi-billion-dollar or multi-trillion-dollar company on earth today. The guys who's operating the switches, the internet, and look at the possibility of unlock. So the better question to ask is, once the intelligence is becoming democratized, how do you use this new electricity to unlock new value? And that's the biggest transition each of us, including me who is sitting here, has to undergo, because the value unlock is going to happen if you unlock the power of the electricity. The value unlock will not happen if you're going to lay cables to the electricity. Of course, unless you're the electric company who's supplying the electricity, which is the Anthropics of the world today. That is their business model. So the bigger question to ask, if I rephrase your question, is like, hey, how does one have to think to become the GE? How does one has to think to become the vacuum cleaner company? How does one has to think to become this, like the switch moderator? I think that's a tougher question to ask, and that's every one of us here in this room is asking the same question, and that's where the possibilities lies. And the great way to do it is like hang around with the people here and ask them, what are you building? And then you may find you can build one the electric bulb company. There can be 100 ones. So I think I think that's how I look at it. I hope
The future is in appliances.
Yeah, the future is good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, and a special welcome to the folks who have joined in a little late. Your loss, you missed in a wonderful session, but there is another one coming up. But before the VC panel, I would love to share with you the company that I'm building is called GTM Unbound, and we are a network of cross-border founders who are 3,000 plus in number, and we do cross-border GTM between US, India, Dubai, India, UK, India, and Singapore, India. So essentially Indian founders who are building cross-border companies. What's special is nothing happens without giving founders the opportunity and platform to share what they're building. And I would like to invite a close friend, Rajoshi, the founder of PromptQL, to share what she is building for startup ecosystem. Can we have a round of applause? This is
Rajoshi, you need to mic up.
Thank you so much for giving me the platform, and thanks everybody. Today actually marks the 1 month anniversary of us moving off Slack. We're a 70-member team. We shut down Slack and moved to PromptQL initially as an experiment to see what it would take. So PromptQL is multiplayer AI. So we're all working with AI. We're using our coding agents. We're using multiple tools, connecting it to different things. But we're all working with AI where we kind of come in together. We discuss what to do or whatever, have Slack conversations about it, and then we all go into our own spaces and kind of work. Sometimes you're sharing, you're building in knowledge layers and context layers and kind of sharing things, but it's still not AI native. Like the way you would work if your workspace woke up. Like imagine if Slack or Teams or Google Chat, whatever you use for your daily communication was the AI. It's not like you're bringing in AI, but that was the AI and it was not an app. Like if Slack was an AI, like just, so once we made that shift 1 month down, what's happened is like, there are no more, like DMs have come down like 70%. There are no more DMs because you don't really need to ask anybody what the status update is. This workspace kind of knows, right? It's like, hey, what happened? Was this email sent? It just knows. So before I ask you a question, it's like I put something out into the ether. Before you read it, it's already kind of assimilated what's happened in that, like, even if it's 2 minutes or 12 hours or 8 hours. And when you read it, you actually get a much better sort of note to read, which is not like my half-baked thing, which brings in all of the context in the middle, right? DMs have gone down like 70%. 20% of our tooling has gone, which is just the start. Like 20% of our tools we don't really need anymore. We are already an AI-build team, like we are building AI, so we were obviously using all of the tools a lot. But despite that, in the last 1 month, 50% more PRs were created and 25% more PRs were merged. So it's taken us in directions that even we did not imagine. And it's been hard to actually describe in words what multiplayer AI can do. So the reason I'm here, and thanks for the time, is to invite you all to experience it. Like, try it. It's open, promptql.io, especially if you're a technical team, product engineering, data. You can go try it. Tomorrow, actually, at 10 o'clock, for those of you who have time, we're opening up our space in the office in SF, but also online, just showing everyone how we work. So that's something that you can join as well. But try it out. If you have questions, I'm here, happy to answer some questions. But thanks for the time in the space. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
I would love to also thank our partners at SVB. Kiran, busy, very busy working. Would you love to come and share? Thank you so much for sharing what I believe is the best venue in San Francisco City and my favorite venue for sure. And I'm sure there are many believers. Would you like to come and?
Thank you for that very kind words about SVB. My name is Kiran Malhotra. I head the India market for Silicon Valley Bank. I just joined the team in January, but I've been with the bank for about 5 years. It is our pleasure to welcome you here today. Many of you may have been to the Experience Center. How many have been here before? So you know we do a number of events. We just hosted a number of events last week for Climate Week. We host a number of events for LATAM the week before. And so it's our pleasure to really bring the ecosystem together. I head India, but as you know, or if you don't know, you should know, Silicon Valley Bank is the bank for the innovation ecosystem. We bank startup companies all the way from incorporation through their growth period, through IPO, exit, and beyond. So, and tech and life sciences companies is what we've been doing for 40 plus years. Again, my name is Kiran. Please come and see me if you'd like afterwards. Love to chat with you, and welcome. Enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you, Aditi, for bringing such great programming here.
Thank you for being a fantastic partner. I would also like to thank Abhishek from Hexaview. Why don't you come on over and share a little bit about Hexaview?
Thanks, Aditi. I think I'll keep it brief. Kashi talked a lot about what we are doing at Hexaview. Happy to answer any questions or happy to contribute to this ecosystem. Since we're working with enterprises, any people want to know the challenges they are facing. We're on this journey to AI, happy to answer those questions for you guys. Thank you.
Want to give a small shout out to a few fellow founder friends in the crowd. Niket, second time founder. A small round of applause, please. Supports the community every time we are here, opens the network. Gaurav traveled from India, founder of SaaS Labs. Parth, would you like to come and share? Just everybody knows AWS, but thank you for the support for the event. I know Amitabh is going to be moderating the next session. Why don't you come and share a minute? Are you giving credits to us?
No, I think, no, thanks Aditi for putting this together. In fact, we are partnering with Aditi for the first time. So
First time in Silicon Valley, yeah.
First time in Silicon Valley, yes. And, really look forward to the evening. It was a great session again. And everyone knows AWS. So I don't think I'm going to talk about that. But if any of you founders or any builders, scalers on AWS are here, if you have any questions, happy to help. Just feel free to connect post the event. Thank you.
Thank you for the support.
Thank you for coming.
This brings us to the other side of the journey, the people who see the potential early, who back it, who shape it. Money, the most important element. Welcoming our VC panel. I've been a fan of Sanjay. I think they're on their 6th fund. In the last decade, I've attended multiple events, and I feel so grateful that I think I manifested it in the last whole decade, that at some point I will host an event and I'll have him come on the panel and share perspective. So would love to welcome Sanjay. Please come.
Sure. By the way, it's thanks for all the pressure. It's 5th fund, not 6th fund. But thank you for the kind words. On a personal note, Kiran, thanks again for having us. This has been like a second home. This is the second time I've been back in San Francisco. I used to be here, moved back to India to start Bloom with Karthik Reddy, and we're back. And we're raising our 5th fund. We invest in both in built in India for India and also, of course, AI cross-border here. And some of our portfolio companies. Rajan, it's great to see you in the panel just before this. Atomic Work, Pixel, Space Tech, Sprinto for compliance, Grey Orange Robotics. And yeah, thank you, Aditi, and happy to share more in the panel.
Thank you. Would love to welcome Neha from Emergent Ventures.
We are a pre-seed and seed stage focused fund based here in the Bay Area. We invest in enterprise AI and usually do $1 to $2 million checks at the pre-seed and seed stages, usually leading or co-leading those rounds. We have about 50 companies in the portfolio right now that spans a bunch of areas within enterprise AI across many different verticals, application level and infrastructure layer. And we also have a focus on India, US cross-border companies as well.
Lovely, welcome. I would now like to welcome Riddhi from Celesta Capital. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I can give a brief about Celesta. So Celesta Capital is a deep tech fund. We've been around for over a decade now, invested about $1.1 billion across 100 portfolio companies. We're very hardware focused. So anything on data, infrastructure, semi is our strong suit. We've done a bit of AI-enabled industries and bioconvergence, and we predominantly invest in US, India, and Canada. We have dedicated funds across these geographies. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. I would now like to welcome Amitabh. He leads the startup ecosystem between India, US cross-border for AWS. thank you for also moderating and supporting the event, Amitabh. Everybody knows AWS, but still.
No, I think Parth talked about AWS. Our role has been there as a catalyst for startups to start on the cloud. If you go back many years back, it was so expensive to actually start up system because you needed Sun servers, etc., to actually start up, right? And that is when I did my startup. But if you look at what has happened over the last decade or so, is that compute as a service has been available to all startups at a just the best compute is available either you are in Silicon Valley or in India, and it's also available as you pay. So cost of starting has just fundamentally come down, and we are seeing that even coming down with all the coding tools, etc., that is coming up. Fine. So as founders start, we help them on multiple dimensions, and one of the dimensions is financial, where we provide startup credits. These credits actually go out to maybe 6 months to a year and a half. Now, once that's done, then we have them scale from a business perspective. There are multiple programs that we do from a perspective of getting enablement of GTM, and then even as you expand, getting partner motions that you can actually work with partner teams at AWS to reach out to enterprise customers, whether you are in healthcare, financial, or construction tech or anything. Fine. So it's between financial, it's financial help, it's technical help, how to scale on AWS, how to use the infrastructure, as well as go to market. Fine. So we take care of, we've got startups that we help in their entire journey.
Thank you. Over to you to moderate the session.
Thanks a lot. You know, I think we are actually at a very interesting time. And it's interesting because every day is changing. We don't know what's coming, what's going, which model releases what feature, which startup that is working on certain services gets disrupted just by the model evolution. Fine. So my first question, and we can start, Sanjay, with you, is when you look at investing, and we'll keep this predominantly to AI, fine. When you look at investing, how do you create an investment thesis? Fine. Because at one end, there are foundational models that require $100 million to invest. Fine. You know, and I don't think so either of you are investing corely in the foundational models. So, but when you invest in the application AI stack, how do you create your thesis? Because you don't know whether some feature comes in an LLM model that actually just disrupts the very moat or that area that you've actually thought through investing.
First of all, again, thanks for having us. Thanks, SVB, for hosting this. Thanks, Aditi. You know, I think it's an interesting question. We're moving at warp speed. So there are like two schools of thought. We used to be far more thesis driven, and, you know, had the classic three. I mean, we had the applied layer, infra layer, and then we would, you know, early stage fund is difficult to fund models because very capital intensive. Though, of course, in India, you have Sarvam, you know, that was seeded. So one, you know, I think the thesis has sort of given way to, we like to find out what the moats are. And even in the moats, there are two schools of thought. You know, Gokul Rajaram has a really interesting tweet and a LinkedIn on there, not just one moat, but 7-8 different types of moats. So in one sense, the thesis has moved to, you know, does this founder have a product mode, tech mode, GTM mode, execution mode, all of these things. The other school of thought is that there are no moats because, you know, tomorrow Claude can come and disrupt, like upend even incumbents, forget startups, right? So the entire business can change. Having said that, I think we like vertical AI because vertical AI, for example, has context. You know, there's domain expertise, and then you kind of in you know, good element of strategies to know what you're not going to do versus before you know what you're going to do. So that, I think, is part of the thesis, and we've done that in certain sectors. We also like you know, dev tooling. We have actually a company just a block away, Lambda Test, which is now Test Mute, which does end-to-end test orchestration. So there's a thesis on dev tooling. And I think physical AI is also interesting. You know, you talked about deep tech. I was just chatting with the founder just before this, and I think data businesses, right? I mean, there's data, like, data is the new oil. I think a key part of AI is also, can you gather that data, not just from software, but also physical AI. So I think that intersection of AI impacting physical AI and the deep tech industrial manufacturing world is also becoming very interesting to us.
Interesting. And Neha, let's have your thoughts, because you are also seeing a lot of cross-border. How are you creating your investment thesis? Are you investing in founders which are predominantly here? Are you investing in founders predominantly which are there and then they're moving in? So what are you looking at? How is your fund creating their own thesis of where the founder should be, the vertical AI? How do you think through the Anthropic and the OpenAI and how they are actually creating their stack?
Yeah. In terms of what we invest in and the founders that we look at, a lot of our founders are cross-border. They may have a team in India or selling to the US. And I think in terms of where it makes sense to build a team, we have a lot of founders that are based here in the US as well, start here in the US, but might not be co-located exactly where their customers are. For example, we have a company that's based in Austin, but they're selling to med device companies that are in the Midwest, and they catch a flight every week and go sit with their customers so that they can learn, what happens between meetings, like capture the context that they might not be able to get over a Zoom call. And we encourage even our founders that are in India to do the same thing as well, because a lot of the value, as Sanjay pointed out, that is getting built now comes from all the context that gets captured and gets built into the products themselves. And a lot of that comes from tribal knowledge. It requires oftentimes spending a lot of time with the customers. And so, whether our founders are based here in the US or in India, we do encourage them often to travel and be with their customers. And there are a lot of benefits to building a cross-border company. It's very tough to do well, but when you do it well, the benefits can be immense. And one of those benefits is that you can buy yourself a lot more runway and time to iterate and reach product market fit. If your burn is high, you can run out of cash. But in an AI world, you often have to iterate. You have to iterate very fast and outpace, what some of the other companies are doing. So if you can buy yourself that time with lower burn and an operations or engineering team abroad in India, that often ends up being very helpful.
And on this thing on your thesis, like, how do you look at vertical AI investing with the risk of parallel OpenAI or Anthropic just coming up with that feature set that just disrupts whatever you thought about the vertical AI, just becomes a wrapper on top of OpenAI? So
I think, more broadly, there's always sort of this tension between horizontal and vertical AI and this concern that some of the horizontal companies will eat up what the vertical companies are doing. I think generally it's very hard for one company or a few companies to be everything to everybody. So what we're thinking about is, where are the spaces where there is a lot of tribal knowledge or a lot of compliance requirements, regulation requirements that requires companies to really build with their customers and have a deep understanding of what they need and code that into the product in a way that an Anthropic may not be positioned to do.
And because if you look at AI founding teams that are here or in the Valley, we never thought that there'll be a $50 million seed round or there'll be a $40 million seed round. Not in India, we still don't see that. But when you are an AI vertical SaaS, whether you are in Japan or whether you are in India or Korea or Europe, you're competing for the same customers, fine. So when you assess a founder, what are you looking at in the founding team for AI verticalized SaaS?
So I'll take that. So when I'm looking at a founder, I need the founder or the founding team to be obsessed with a particular problem. They need to understand if I'm doing something in vertical AI.
Let's take an example.
So I recently met a founder who mentioned that we've had companies like Synopsys and other players solving the engineering problem, right? But there is no orchestration layer that is solver agnostic helping them solve the problems. And we sat down and drilled through every industry where this is applicable. And the data that came out was like 70% of an engineer's time is spent on CAD designing, doing meshing, etc. But if you have a solution that is solver agnostic and you can create an orchestration layer on top of that, the productivity that you get out of it is amazing. And I just felt the founder was so obsessive about it because he truly knew what the problem was, having worked in different industries. So I feel we do have great founders dropping out of college or coming out of college. I absolutely love them. We've backed many of them. But I feel specifically in agentic AI in the vertical space, you need some kind of experience coming in to understand what industry problem you're solving, to be able to solve it better and as well as differentiate yourself.
Right. So I'll make the question a little more complicated. I think I completely agree. One of the biggest skill sets that a founder should have is an ability to understand the problem, because I think that premise is held true for last 50 years, right? Because if you don't understand the problem and you don't have empathy for the problem, there is, solutions, you can hire people and they can build it, but your ability to narrate a story and the problem is there. But my larger question is, how different are founding teams? Because generally what happened earlier was that you needed a founder who could understand the problem and you needed strong engineering teams. But today you're a third mix. So a lot of the good teams, like you take 11 Labs and all, are also a combination of researchers coming into the mix. Fine. We've never seen today. So for example, a lot of the leading investors here have mapped every single researcher sitting in Stanford or Berkeley, and they are dictating before a business guy comes in the money. Fine. So the risk element today when you invest in research, and you guys are all investors, is a little uncertain, or is a largely more uncertain than anything. And that's the reason you're saying high amount of seed money going and at a higher valuation, where the assumption is the TAMs will be high and the multiples will be high. But how do you now look at a founding team and say, you know what, you're a good engineer, you're a good person who understands the problem, but hey, the research element is missing. So somebody has to, because this space is so dynamic. So how do you?
I completely agree. I think a good founder will understand their lack of skill set. For example, I'm lacking in these aspects of the business, and should be very open to find the right kind of people, whether it's co-founder or team, to add those elements in. There have been times where founders have been very intellectually sound to say that, hey, I'm a great technical person, but I cannot do BD. I don't know how to do sales and marketing. And they're okay to have the right kind of person come and join in. You give out the right amount of equity. I feel people are important to realize the vision.
So how are you looking at, because there was this company, then Manas Robotics, that we looked at it, fine. You have not invested, but you were looking at it. And what impressed me was that at a very seed stage, they have a researcher in the team, and they've got complete research talent across US. So my larger question is related to founding teams with researchers. Is that necessity in deep AI, verticalized or physical AI startups?
Well, a couple of things. I'll just come back to that. I'll just start with what Riddhi was talking about. I resonate with that a lot about the context about founders being obsessed about the problem more than the solution. That's taken. Now, Kashi, I enjoyed your talk earlier. I'll tell you, and I'll tell you why I'm referencing this. Earlier, you could have the main founder used to be, and he was the chief customer officer, chief sales officer, and you could kind of build, let's say, the software or the solution in Bangalore and sell it. Now, today, you have the head of product, you have a head of AI who may be the CEO himself or herself. I think it's the resurgence of the technical founder in one sense, right? We were meeting a young founder recently, and I said, "What's your mode?" He says, "A product mode." I said, "Tell us more." And he says, "We're launching every day." So I said, like, wow. I mean, they're launching a new product version, or iterating every day. That's how fast it's moving. So I think the answer is it depends. It depends. If you're doing core research, absolutely, you have to have that. At the same time, I think you have to round out the team. And I think you brought up a good point. I think the best founders, CEOs, people in life are the ones who don't know what they don't know, or know what they don't know and where to fill it and who can fill it, versus saying we can do it all. So I think we're seeing more well-rounded teams. We are seeing, in a sense, some larger seed rounds where the metrics are very different. They're not the typical ARR growth metrics. They are maybe, research papers published, very different. I think it's changing. And I think we also have to change. So we are also learning in that sense. One word that we are finding a lot and we like to use is founder slope. I think you were referencing, like a vertical slope in some of, whether it's Claude usage or others. How fast can the founding team learn? how fast are they moving? Are they benchmarking against the best? And I think that linear way of growing where you build the, let's say product in Bangalore, come and sell, it's not working. Even when you're here, in one sense, cross-border is not just India, US, but South Bay to San Francisco. That's a new definition of cross-border in one sense, right? Because you're seeing a massive resurgence here. A lot of research activities happening in the city. We're sitting in the heart of it. I know, I'll share with you, this comes back to the talent density, where lots of Silicon Valley VCs, they're in the city like 4 days a week because a lot of this research and AI activity labs are here, and that's happening. So I would say it's changed, but for early stage VCs, we also look at vertical AI. It's not like we're backing large model companies, right? So but what we are doing, which is new, is we are developing that talent network, which we were not earlier. It was not relevant to us. Now we're seeing even our, Rajan. Rajan's interesting. Rajan, who just spoke with him, shout out. Rajan was the advisor banker who helped sell Vijay's last company to Nutanix. Vijay is now building Atomic. So he's appropriately wearing a jacket today because as iBanker, he was wearing a jacket then. So Vijay, for example, is coding. He's a CEO. And to your point, even I think CEOs in some sense is saying that I want to get my hands dirty. I have to be in touch with the product that's moving. I can't just go and have a deck and sell it. I have to do it. So, long answer to that, but definitely I think we're seeing more product and technical elements and energy coming to the fore.
I can add to that a little bit. Yeah, definitely agree that, we're seeing a lot more research-focused founders that are being funded. At the seed and pre-seed stages, we're often not doing those rounds. But on the research side of things, we have a company in our portfolio called Trenner Robotics, and they build AI software for robotics. That's a space, extremely technical, sort of cutting edge. Both actually whole team, when we funded them, we're all PhDs, researchers, but had like a knack for the go-to-market side of things. And I think that the level of intensity and the amount of time that they spent with customers, sort of disproving a bunch of theses and figuring out what customers actually needed, maybe not their core skill set, but something that was learned over time. And that was something that was really impressive for us. And that level of being able to present and tell a story is also critical in a team's ability to hire the right people and then fundraise in the future as well. And so those are other things that we think about when we're backing technical teams is do they have that ability to build out the team and bring on the skill set as you said.
And you're seeing that also happening in India a lot.
Yeah.
There's a very strong corridor. In fact, I'm learning a lot from my colleagues. They're watching the same podcast. It's the same framing. It's just that, we are sitting here physically, but otherwise a lot of that enthusiasm and optimism is shared there.
And you?
Yeah, agreed. Same. Yeah, I think, almost all the founders we're meeting have ambitions to build a venture scale business for one reason or another. They have high conviction in the problem that they're solving and don't think that they could do it at another business. So
great, guys. With that, we'll open up. Any questions from the audience?
So hi there. Do you actually invest on Latin American companies? And if so, what is your perspective on that market?
We don't. For us, it's only US, Canada, and India, and we have dedicated funds that are raised there. And from our investor base, we also, and legal reasons, we're not able to invest in LATAM. But say if we invested in a company or that is setting up a subsidiary there and doing something there, that's possible. But the headquarters being there or majority of the team being there, that's not something we would look at.
Yeah, similar for us, we focus on companies that are incorporated in the US with the go-to-market focus in the US. A lot of the times, parts of the team are abroad in Latin America or other parts of the world, and we do look at that.
We haven't for similar reasons, but actually we've seen teams that I think time zone advantage. Many other where they have teams, who are, and then they also go after Latin America as a market. But there are investors who specifically focus on LATAM, and I know Kiran and Andy they have a LATAM team. You can talk to them. They're very active there.
I have a question. As agents are becoming literally team members for your day-to-day work and life. So there are companies that were founded specifically for, the whole IAM thing and like the access management, but for humans. And have you also invested in the similar IAM space, but for agents? Because what I feel is like in next 1 or 2 years, we'll see a wave of, startups that are solving this identity and access management layer for agents. So what do you see as an investors? Have you are you guys already getting like pitches for the space? And I just want to.
I mean, we are in a AI agentic world, so we have seen pitches which are, how do you manage the security of agents? And, just on a personal note, I mean, I say that my, the next best friends are, Granola, Claude, and like Whisperflow. So we're all using these tools now, managing the security for, even within organizations. And they will be. I know that I remember seeing a founding team that was ex-Wiz and then ex-Palo Alto Networks, and they were basically coming together to, to manage the security of agents. That is the agent that using really the agent that says there is. So I think we're early days, but definitely. And I think all of us are a little more application layer focused, but there are lots of VCs who are very infra and cybersecurity, and they would certainly be seeing much more of that.
Thank you so much. I'm building in the same space. So if anyone wants to talk about this thing with me, I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Like, what has excited you the most in the last 3 to 6 months, in the especially cross-border space? I know the Valley will have its own waves, but between India, US, what's excited you the most?
I'll tell you what's excited and also what's sort of challenging or scary, but in a nice way. I think vertical AI is excited in the sense that we're seeing the uptick of that very fast. Because I'll give you an example. Amita, we were saying what companies you're excited about. Confido Health. They basically make, what they're building is vertical voice AI agents to automate the entire back office, front office, mid office healthcare clinics. And because they're very vertically focused and it's such a pain, all of us trying to call our PCP, holding on for 45 minutes. They've just taken the friction out of the process. So that's exciting. And I'm sure all of us have examples as vertical. I think what is exciting but also daunting is how fast. I mean, our own Vijay almost saying that we're going to reset our entire product direction roadmap. Like, we might just say it appended not just by Claude but all the incumbents. That almost every week is like could be a wake up call, a wake up story. I think that's the exciting part, but also it's keeping you on your toes. So we've actually seen that you can't wait 3 months for you have your quarterly board meeting and it just shows up. You can't wait 3 months. Maybe it's 3 weeks, so it's a wait. See, I'm serious, right? Because that's a lifetime. So I think that's exciting, but it's also challenging. A flip side of both.